I go to this meeting with the developer, and there's 2 land use attorneys, and there's architects, and this and that, and they're all of this is going on, and there's a banker, and I'm like, guys, it starts and ends at leasing. You should be asking me, what can we get in rent? What are the quality of tenants we can get? Let's start from there. And I can't tell you how many times in that developing that shopping center, I had to tell them or say, hey guys, nobody's going to lease that space. It's in the shadow. The setback is too far from the front of the grocery store. They've got that fascia that goes in and out like that. That looks great on an architect rendering, but you can't split up the space then. You're right. Brokers are the key. Everything starts and ends at leasing. If nobody pays the rent, the rest of it doesn't mean anything.
Need a partner who sees the big picture? Forza Management. We're not just property managers, we're strategic partners. Navigating the complex world of commercial real estate can be daunting. That's where Forza Management comes in. Forza Management provides services in the mountain and desert states and covers all types of asset classes, including retail, industrial, and office. Our team of experts delivers exceptional property management services, namely property maintenance, lease administration, and annual CAM reconciliations. When looking at your next property, check out our website at forzacommercial.com. Forza Management, maximizing your investment and minimizing your stress.
Welcome back to the Dirt Dog Pod. I have a great guest today, Jim Reynolds.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
Jim, you're a senior real estate manager at Great Clips.
Correct.
And you have been there for a while.
It'll be 25 years in February. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's unheard of nowadays, but yeah, it's a remarkable run.
Yeah, I was going to say, honestly, if you think about that in the big scheme of things, it's so infrequent to hear about somebody being at one company for 25 years.
Right. Well, I think it all comes back to the company itself, and it's still privately held. Same people run it. The same values that I signed up for are the same values today, and the mission is simple, and we're just trying to execute. So most people in these kind of jobs, they have to hop around because things change. People open stores, they close stores, and real estate people are first to go. And it's just been the same culture at Great Clips ever since I started. So no reason to go anywhere else.
How did you end up at Great Clips?
I went to college at the University of Oregon, by the way, Ducks #1 in the country. And
Go Ducks.
I grew up in San Diego. I moved to Oregon. My family bought a family restaurant business when I was 15. So got out of high school in Oregon, small town in Oregon, and then went to University of Oregon. And then my roommate got a job in Seattle with a developer. His older brother was a banker in Seattle and lent this fellow, Basil Veazes was his name, money, mid-'80s, go, build a bunch of shopping centers. So that's how I got to Seattle, was to work for this shopping center developer. I had no background in it, just fresh out of college, 23. I viewed my 6 years there as paid graduate school, just learning the business. So then after that, I was a broker for 10 years here in Washington, and then got the job at Great Clips.
And so when you started at Great Clips, what was your territory? What was your area? What were you doing?
They had just bought out a regional franchisee, which is something we don't do nowadays. Nowadays, Great Clips Inc. owns everything. But when they were starting out, we had regional franchisees, and that group owned from San Francisco up to the Northwest and Western Canada, Alberta and BC. So when Great Clips Inc. bought them in the fall of 99, they needed a real estate person and an operations person for the Northwest. So they hired myself and an operations person.
So Great Clips has been around, they've been in Canada for 25 years?
20 anyway. Yeah, Great Clips started in 1982, so we're 42 years old at this point. So yeah, that group was struggling. Great Clips Inc. bought them back, total in-house, and then needed a real estate person. So I happened to talk about how small the business is. I grew up in San Diego. My best childhood friend was Ted Frumpkin, who's now at Heritage Grocers, late of Sprouts, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, Ted's dad was a big real estate guy, Neil Frumpkin. And so he worked at Jack in the Box, and then he got the Payless Shoes job or Pizza Hut job. So anyway, ironically, we both end up in the business. So at the time when I was wanting to leave brokerage, Ted hooked me up with Dean Weber, who's the head of real estate for Great Clips. And so Dean called me, or I called Dean, and that's how I got the Great Clips job. Wow. So it's just a small world.
Yeah. And when you joined the company, how many stores did they have?
They had about 1,400 at the time.
Okay. And then what's the count at today?
It's 4,450.
And you have opened, literally, as you and I have been texting back and forth, 10% of those.
I've been involved in those, yeah. I mean, yeah, and I don't know what the real number is, but yeah, most of the population still in the U.S. is east of the Mississippi, so I cover a huge territory, but there's not a lot of people in a lot of it. But yeah, it's been a great run.
And that is your territory today, more or less, Mississippi West.
Well, yeah, a lot of the western states and Canada.
How many stores are in Canada?
About 165.
Let's talk about for just a moment how the ownership of a Great Clips goes. So there's a local. You got rid of the regional franchise model.
Yes. Every store is owned by a franchisee, and in the major markets, so we don't have any franchise development groups or any of that own a region. Then they sell the franchises. We sell the franchises to every franchisee on a one-off basis. They want to open another store, they buy another franchise application. There are some small markets where we will sell the market to one person. Let's say that's Palm Springs. We're only going to have 10 or so stores in there. We won't have multiple franchisees in those, so we'll sell those to one. But other than that, it's one store per franchisee, or one application per store. Our largest franchise groups have about 80. The average is about 4. We have about 750, 800 franchisees for 4,400 stores. A lot of people own 10, 15 of these. But we want them to invest in the local market. So we don't want somebody in Ohio owning a Great Clips in Seattle. If you want to be a franchisee in Seattle, you need to live in Seattle. It's your money. You're investing it. And we want you to be close to your business. That's there's no private equity. So that's how Great Clips operates.
And that's put an interesting business model. So how much, it's always interesting when you talk to corporate real estate people that are interacting between franchisees or operators, right, and on the ground. What an interesting business model, right, it is for those people. So how do they typically, why Great Clips? Why are they franchisees?
I think the biggest thing is it's a proven business model, and everybody needs a haircut. So, and a lot of franchisees, they don't want to work in their store. So if you're a, Subway franchisee, you can make the sandwich. You can't make the sandwich at Great Clips. Most of our owners are not in the hair business before they come here. So there are some stylists that work their way up and get some capital and get, maybe their franchisee will sell them a store or two. We do have that. But generally, these are investor folks that don't want to own, they want to own a franchise that they can touch and they can work on, but they don't have to be there all the time. So it really is and I'll give you an example. Our franchisee in Helena, Montana, Kyle Eckman, he worked for the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis. His wife's a chiropractor. They moved to Helena. There was a Federal Reserve branch there, and he started Great Clips. His wife has her business. He was working at the bank. Pretty soon he gets enough Great Clips. He doesn't have to work at the bank anymore. Raising 3 boys. Life is great. He's got 40-some salons now. So that's a great success story for Great Clips, but that's very typical. We have folks that come in that are doing something else and just want to own a business and not just put money in the stock market or something like that.
What are the characteristics that go into a strong performing Great Clips location, right? So you're out and you're scouting the next great spot, right? Or helping one of your people do that. What is it that you're looking for?
My idea has changed over time as technology has changed over time. When I started Great Clips, it used to be, we want to be in the dominant grocery anchored shopping center in the trade area, in the suburbs. We're a suburban growth tenant. That's the number 1 or number 2 grocer in the trade area because that's where people are coming 3 or 4 times a week. They're obviously not getting a haircut that frequently, but we got to be on autopilot. The car's got to be on autopilot. Visibility is still the best thing ever for retail real estate. Visibility and access for us are the 2 biggest keys in my view. So the first several years, we would just go in that grocery anchored shopping center. Now I'm much more visibility driven. We have the Great Clips app that's that everybody should have on their phone. I'm going to blow this number. It's been downloaded 40 million times, something like that. It's almost 70% of our business. So we don't necessarily, the phone's going to tell you where to go. We just need to be visible and accessible. So now, where we might have just waited for that spot to come in that grocery anchored shopping center, now we're talking to guys like you who are going to build a pad across the street. And they're going to put 3 or 4 tenants in. We need to be in that solid daily needs epicenter intersection, but we don't necessarily need to be in the anchored center all the time. But I think, in real estate people, everybody likes to default to location. I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. I think Great Clips is in the customer service delivery business. We're using hair as our vehicle. If we treat people right, they will come back. And I could point you to locations that are marginal real estate, fabulous performers, and then I can point you to sites that should work great and they don't. And it really comes down to how customers get treated once they get inside the store. So we want the great real estate because that's where all the people are. And if we get the better real estate, the competitor doesn't. So we're not going to forego the location question, but we really are if we treat people right, they come back. If we get that part right, some of the rest of it, we can get by with lesser real estate.
Is it difficult with the franchise version of your model, right? Because really it's the franchisees, it's their employees that you're talking about, right? As far as treating the customers correct. How do you keep that consistent across markets?
Our operations and marketing group is the biggest group at Great Clips. So there's a few of us real estate people, but once the store's open, our people are in touch with them. Every one of our computers or cash registers computers are on the same protocol. We get real-time information into Great Clips. We're monitoring everything, wait times, how long customers are waiting, how many customers walk in, walk out, all those sorts of things. So our operations folks really can tell how efficient the salon's being run, and then they work with the franchisees daily on maximizing their schedule, putting people to work at the right hours when the customers want to come in. We measure all of that. We focus group all the time. We spend lots and lots of time and energy understanding what the customers want, relay that down through the operations and marketing team to the franchisees. So there are no franchisees that just go off on their own and run their business. And because Great Clips is in the royalties collection business. Yes. The franchisees are in the hair salon business. So it's in our best interest that they train their staff and have solutions for those times when the salon's not operating properly.
Tell us about the prototypical Great Clips today. What's the size? How many booths?
It's around 1,000 square feet. Just did some deals in Honolulu. They're 800 square feet. The rent's too high, or very high. Sorry, landlords. Then we have some Midwest legacy salons that are probably 1,800 square feet. It really, for us, we can do all the haircuts we ever need to do in 1,000 square feet, which is going to have 8 or 9 stations and a shampoo bowl or 2, which depends on the regulations and things, a back room and a restroom. That's basically it. We will, and a lot of it, everybody says, we can do any kind of format, layout kind of thing. So we can take, a 20 by 40 square foot space. We can take 15 by 80. So when people say, what square footage you need, I'm talking total occupancy cost. What's my total occupancy cost? Then we can make it work.
And what are you typically targeting, or what's the franchisee targeting? How many haircuts? Is it a haircut a week? Is it a haircut a day?
Yeah, Great Clips Inc. is focused on customer counts, not sales volumes. So pre-COVID, we were at 500 haircuts a week as a chain, 4,501 stores. Now we're about 420 haircuts a week. So we focus on haircuts per week and growing that number and giving the franchisees the tools to do that.
And does the pricing change? So back to the Honolulu rent being different than an Omaha rent, for example. Right. Pricing change between the markets?
Yes, they do. Franchisees control that. We are not allowed to tell them what to charge for a haircut. So they base that on the local market, and the co-op of franchisees in the markets agree on those prices. But there is variability in a market. There will be different price points in Seattle. Depends on which salon you go to, but they're all pretty close.
We were talking about the Yelm, Washington one yesterday because I was down there looking at some real estate. Yep. And tell me about that Yelm salon. What is it? Why did you choose that location?
That store's been there over 15 years. We're generally a growth chasing company. So when Walmart was coming down there, and a lot of growth was happening there, we did sort of Hawks Prairie, and we did Tumwater, and we did that store within the same 2 or 3 year period of time. So when I'm looking at a market, I'm seeing where's the growth happening. We're always want to be on the leading edge of that. If that major grocer is going out there, there's enough people for Great Clips usually. So I want to be in the best site the first time. So we're willing to, and our franchisees, obviously, they're paying the rent. They have to agree to this, but we're willing to go in there and subsidize it for a while, or they have to feed it for a while till everybody moves in. We can't get in the great site if we're coming in late once everybody's there already. So the Yelm is perfect. Younger families, solid median income, growth, good retail synergy in the trade area. That's what really works for us.
I want to pivot for a minute, and I want to talk about one of the marketing ploys Great Clips has done, which I think is genius. Okay. And that is the Kick a Field Goal program. Yeah. Who came up with that?
We have pivoted our marketing program. Well, Lisa Hakey's our VP of marketing, and her team. They just do a fabulous job. They have pivoted quite a bit to now we are one of the major supporters of the BCS. So you'll see Great Clips splattered all over the college football and the Oregon Duck games.
I love the Ducks plugs.
And March Madness. And then we're also the official hair salon blend of the NHL. So when you get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you'll see us all over the boards. we used to be heavily into NASCAR and some other things, and we've moved on from those sorts of things. So Lisa and her team come up with all that creative, and we've really made a big investment into those three groups over the last several years, and you'll see an elevated exposure to that this year with our new agreement with those folks.
If for anybody who's not aware of it, from a college football perspective, if for some reason your favorite team stadium doesn't do this, Great Clips, at least for like University of Utah, BYU, they bring out a fan, and the fan basically gets an opportunity to kick a field goal. And if they get a field goal, there's either a massive discount on haircuts or it's a free haircut, depending on where you are.
Yes. And that may not be a national program. I know our Salt Lake franchisees are very connected, and I've been to several events with some of our marketing partners. We'll have a ski day or a golf day. Our franchisees are very involved, so that could be a University of Utah program that we've just partnered with them on a local basis, where we may not have the kick field goal across the country kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
So the local franchisees will drive that a lot of times.
Joe Mills, who's been my business partner for a long time, he happened to mention to me one day, and he's of course opened a bunch of salons with.
Yeah, Joe's the best there is.
So pound for pound at 5'6", he is the most talented tenant rep broker out there.
I guarantee you, and again, I've got a lot of them, so I don't want to slight any of my great ones that I have, but Joe's at the top of the list.
Yeah. He's great. So he's a diehard Cougar. I'm a Ute.
Yep.
And somehow he mentions to me that he has access to the people who decide who's going to kick the field goal.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he just kind of shares this with me. And then next thing I know, he doesn't tell me, but I get a video from like a whole bunch of people that Joe Mills is kicking the field goal at a BYU football game.
Wow.
Completely shanks it. Didn't even it hit, I think it might have been out of the air before it hit the paint in the end zone, but nowhere close to the field goal.
Close.
Yeah, not even close. So this goes on, and so, we're sitting there at a game, and I sit by a lot of family members, and one of my cousins who was a quarterback in high school, and his real Uncle Rico moment, right? He said he was making fun of the participant that was trying to kick the field goal at Utah that day. And he said, I could do that with my eyes closed. And I said, oh, really? You think you could do that, huh? And he said, oh, it wouldn't even be hard at all. I got this. And I said, okay, no problem. So I literally am texting Joe, right? We have him signed up for the next game.
Oh, sweet.
So then I tell him, are you sure you can do this? And this is in front of all of our family members. He said, absolutely. I'm like, great. You are kicking next week. And now he has to, right? He has no choice. Yeah, he's been talking trash all game. Well, he gets out there next week, and he practices all week. I don't think he did anything for work that week. He didn't help out with the kids. He didn't do anything at the house.
Not sleeping either.
No. He was just out at his local high school. So he gets all trained up, and he gets out there. Well, you put on a Great Clips University of Utah jersey. Okay, well, my cousin has grown slightly since high school, right?
Sure.
So the size medium probably would have fit him back in the day, but now it's a medium, right?
Oh, sure.
Which made it so much better.
Yes.
But he went out, he drilled the field goal.
Did he?
Yes, it was unbelievable, and he has been talking smack since.
That's great.
Yeah.
Glad he just showed up and made it happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the whole stadium erupts, right?
Perfect.
Just pivot with you here a little bit. You're an avid outdoorsman.
Love it. Absolutely.
You and I were talking tiger muskies.
Yes.
What do you got on the docket? What do you got planned this spring?
I'm going to do a little duck hunting over the Christmas holiday and steelhead fishing down in Oregon. So I got a good buddy of mine doing that. I think my dad got me into the outdoors when I was a kid, just like your dad did, and I've had the love ever since. So, obviously, I love living in the Pacific Northwest. We've got great outdoor activities. I own a fly fishing raft. I'm out on the water as much as I can. So be chasing some ducks and some steelhead here in the next, over the Christmas holiday.
So that's your piece, right? If you have
absolutely.
the choice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think, as much as, and we were talking about your kids earlier, anything we can do to make people appreciate, time away from the tech and all the normal things that everybody's just racing along these days, that's the peaceful spot.
I think that's what I love the most about it is you get out there and first off, you have to turn your phone off because you have to be quiet anyways for hunting. But you're usually in some remote spot anyways, and people can't find you. It's kind of nice.
I just went on a 6-week sabbatical with Great Clips this last summer. It's just fabulous. Another great reason to work at Great Clips. But they turn off your access to Great Clips. So my boss, Nate, took care of my business while I was gone. And I tried to make sure that everything was sort of lined up so it was no big fires going on. But again, I can't check in. I can't do an email. I can't do anything. I've never done that before. So I think taking that time to be away, purposefully, disconnecting is a great thing.
Tell us about the sabbatical program.
Once every 5 years, you have to bank the sabbatical hours yourself, which is fine. So yeah, once every 5 years, they allow you to take up to 6 weeks and check out.
And they literally turn off your access to
Yes.
to email?
Yeah,
And
the technology team comes in and cuts me off,
that's amazing.
and everything goes to Nate Omi, my boss in this case, watched over my business. Yeah, fabulous. And then you come back, you have 0 emails in the email box.
And so this is so it's every 5 years. Is
Yep.
This isn't your first sabbatical?
It is my first sabbatical, and they haven't had it the entire time at Great Clips. But I'm an idiot. I should have done this years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was wonderful, and I just think generally everything we're doing at work. I mean, you're the busiest guy even I know in real estate, but whatever we're working on, it'll be there tomorrow. And other than some things that might, unless the house is burning down, people need to balance out a little bit, take a little time for themselves, and appreciate. My wife and I go on a walk every day, and we're just amazed that. Now maybe it's because I got gray hair, but we're looking at the birds, we're watching the clouds go by, we're listening to everything's going by. Everybody that walks by us has their headphones on, they're looking at the phone, totally checked out. I guess they're walking to make sure that they're mobile, but it's the kids I drive by on the street going to work. When we were kids, they were throwing rocks at each other as you wait for the bus. Now there's 10 of them standing next to each other, facing the thing. They might be texting each other, but they're standing right next to each other.
Yeah.
I just so the outdoors for me really is a reset.
What did you do during your sabbatical?
We took a raft and went to Montana for a week, my wife and I, which was fabulous. It's also our 20-year anniversary.
Congrats.
So we did that. Then we came back, and our daughter and son came back for a week. Then our daughter and son-in-law joined us for 2 weeks in Europe. So we went to Switzerland for a week and Tuscany for a week. I'd never been to Europe, so that was fascinating. Other than I'm not going to do a 10-hour plane or 12-hour plane ride again. That was great. Then came back, and I went on a little bit of a boys' jaunt out to Lewiston to chase steelhead on the Clearwater for 3 or 4 days, and then went back to work.
That's great. What a great program. And is that available that's available to anybody at corporate that's been there for more than 5 years?
Yes.
Wow. What a great hiring mechanism and good way to retain your talent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The landscape is evolving pretty rapidly here, right? And it's been interesting because, as you well know, I kind of a third-gen developer, so I kind of grew up with it around the dinner table as a kid.
Yep.
And saw my dad's perspective of building shopping centers, and now I've gone into my own perspective of doing net lease development, which we really ramped up in January of 20.
Right.
What an amazing time, by the way, to start a development program.
Absolutely.
So costs have been running. The pro forma is nearly impossible to solve.
Yeah.
How are you getting deals done right now?
It might be one of the more difficult times we've ever had. I think right now, nobody's really built shopping centers space at scale since before COVID even. So right now, certainly not after COVID. So one of the challenges we have is if nobody's building space, there's all the good space is leased, we're going to have a tough time. I think the 08-09 recession really started the decline in the aggregate growth of shopping center space. There was a bunch of projects that were teed up in that period of time. Then that hit, they all went on pause, and then that's what got built after the recession up until 17, 18, and then COVID hits in 20. So we have to pivot. If there's other kind of and nowadays, I mean, I just looked at my deal sheet before I came out here today. Half of my deals were new construction, half of them were existing. In a lot of the new construction sites we're dealing with, people aren't building shop space at scale either. So there's building, we just signed a lease in a King Super anchored site in Colorado, brand new, big center, only 1 or 2 shop pads. So we're talking 20,000 feet of shops on a 250,000 feet of space.
I do think it's important to differentiate, right? Because some of our listeners who might just be a customer, a person interested in this podcast or what you have to say about life today, might think, well, wait a minute, I've seen a McDonald's come in, I've seen a Starbucks come in, I've seen a Dutch Bros come in.
Yep.
Right, but what we're talking about is you're actually the multi-tenant. You're talking about
Multi-tenant,
where the sub sandwich shop is located,
Right.
the hair cutter, the nail salon, right? The stuff
Yes.
next to the grocery store.
Yeah. Back in the day, you'd build a 100,000-foot shopping center, and you'd have 20,000, 30,000 feet of shops. Now we're seeing 200,000-foot shopping centers built and 7 pads on the front with Starbucks, Chipotle, everybody freestanding food guy or a bank or something like that. Because and there's still that bunch of tenants, shop tenants in one space. So with the cost of construction, I see you and some of my other developer friends lamenting, I can't get the switch gear for a year in some of these buildings. It's easier just to ground lease or sell the pad to the in and out and you're done. Right. So we know that that's a challenge. The interest rates are a challenge, all those things. But from our standpoint, it doesn't do us any good if we can't get on the site. So we do have, I almost lost a deal in a market that will remain nameless because you'll figure it out, where we had a lease ready to sign and the developer came back and said, I'm doing a car wash. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, my switch gear won't be here for a year, and I can't go with the glue lambs now because they're too expensive. I got to go, whatever. I'll just ground lease to the car wash guys. They're beating the door down. Don't do that, So eventually they did build our building, and off we go. So it's just difficult. So luckily being privately held, franchisees are successful. Not everybody's growing in every market. We can really sort of fish where the fish are as it comes out. Pre-COVID, we're doing 200 and 250 new leases a year. This year, we're going to do 115 to 120. So we're at half the rate. But that's okay from the standpoint that we will do the deals that are available to do. So we want some regeneration of real estate. A lot of the developers are looking at their huge parking lots that aren't making them any money anymore, and now you got the curb lines of the world and all these folks coming out and realizing that, maybe we should be buying and developing and redeveloping some of these shop pads. So we're hoping that some of that will create some more opportunities. Hopefully some folks like you will build some buildings for some shops when it makes more sense. And we're just keeping our relationships going and keep the pipeline rolling.
What does it cost to build out a typical store right now?
If we can get a white box from a landlord, which is getting rarer and rarer, by the way. It used to be just Texas gave you the dirt floor and a check, and now it's almost everywhere. And a small check, by the way. If we get a white box, it's going to cost $100,000 to $150,000 to build a Great Clips, and then about $40,000 to $50,000 in equipment.
When you go back to the building at scale concept, it does kind of make me wonder how we ever get back to that, right?
Yes.
Because it is interesting. I mean, you constantly, there was the narrative, which was really wrong for a long time, that retail was dead. It's obviously not dead. It's obviously thriving, right? We're still building grocery stores. Yeah. We just aren't building any of these shop spaces anymore. Right. And it just blows my mind.
Well, ironically, and this, I think there will be a reset at some point, but I'll use Regency Centers as an example. One of our biggest landlords in the country. They're fabulous people. They build the same side of kind of centers that target the same demographics we do. They want best in class. We want best in class owners who empty the garbage and mow the lawn and all those things. Pre-0809, if they're building 25 new grocery anchored shopping centers a year, and we would get our share of those. Certainly since COVID hit, but nobody was building any shop space or any shopping centers really since then. You've got people just buying and selling each other. So all of these people, and you have some people come to the Northwest, bought 8 or 10 shopping centers, and then they sold the same 8 or 10. It's the same 8 or 10. So now you've got the bigger groups been buying and selling these, just jacking up the rent. There's no new space coming online. That's what's been happening with the big landlord marketplace that I've observed over the last 10 years. And I'm hoping that, because I think the grocers had to spend a bunch of time, and they were doing this pre-COVID. They had to get their online and multi-channel delivery systems ramped up. They were investing a lot of money in remodels and infrastructure for that. Then COVID hits, and they're the darlings. Hallelujah. That's a great time to be a grocer and a landlord of a grocery anchored shopping center. But they had to really ramp speed, warp speed, get that up to speed during COVID. So Walmart did it, Kroger did it, everybody did it. Now that's all done, I think. I mean, I'm not talking to them, but it's done. Now I want them to invest. Not only is the focus on the suburbs now with the whole COVID experience, but I'm hoping that they and their developer partners will invest into more aggregate shopping center space that will give us more opportunities.
It is interesting. We have our 2 buildings that I'm building right now that are multi-tenant buildings, mm-hmm. and then everything else is basically a single-tenant building.
Right.
The market has shifted over the last 6 months, and it's almost impossible to solve a pro forma to build a single tenant building anymore.
Okay.
And so a lot of what we're doing is actually just fee developing for a brand, and just they balance sheet the property, and that's a way we can still get stuff built and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
What is fascinating though is the multi-tenant actually still generally pro formas.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I think. That's probably one of the things that just blows my mind the most about all this is that there's nobody really building it, but it still does pro forma.
And I think when I look at those topics, there's still, I mean, the T-Mobiles and Great Clips and Chipotle and UPS Drive, we all need space. We're all doing great. There was the argument that it's just easier to do the single tenant. The cap rates are so low, et cetera, et cetera. We pre-COVID, we've done a few deals with Panda Express, for example. So that the CFT folks, they might buy a pad for Panda, but it's too big for just the Panda. So they can put 2 or 3 more tenants in, but they don't want food guys. So the hair makes perfect sense. Pacific Dental, those folks, they buy pads all the time. Sometimes it's too big. So we need folks to think about, great, instead of just running with the Starbucks or whoever, if it's big enough, add more space. And I know a lot of times, as I get to the spreadsheet side of the thing and what you deal with, this is a sort of a novel, stupid idea. But anyway, I'm at the last quarter of my career. I'm not too worried about it. I would love somebody to just look at like average unit volumes or percent of sales and say, okay, Starbucks is going to do this amount of sales. UPS store is going to do this. Great Clips is going to do this. We'll charge you all what your average unit or what your occupancy cost is. Great Clips 11% across our system. Okay, so maybe that means the Starbucks rent is $87 and the Great Clips rent is $40 because they're only paying whatever their occupancy cost is. We're paying what our occupancy cost is, and you can make it work. Where I've run into problems with developers, they'll run around with a Starbucks, they'll overpay for the land, and then whatever it costs because they got Starbucks. And the next thing you know, the rent is $90 in Modesto. And there isn't a $90 rent in Modesto. We can't pay $90. Right. So that's my shout out to the development community is we're so stable. Everybody needs a haircut. That's not going away. But we need space. So we need, if you're going to develop that pad with these top tier brands like we're talking about, find a way to make our space smaller, find a way to work the pro forma to make it work.
So you have some of these units that are built next to Panda.
Yep.
And how do those units perform typically? I mean, Panda I see is a company that rarely misses on real estate.
No, great. And we don't have a lot. We might have a half dozen. Good. They're still there. They've been there for years. The last one I did with when you mentioned Aaron Harris's Dutch Brothers, it was in Grants Pass. We did the Panda Express in front of the Winco there. And it's a great location.
It's actually an interesting match, I would think, too, right?
Yeah.
Profile-wise. Do you have more, is the Great Clips customer typically male, female? I assume male.
70% male.
Yeah.
Generally.
And I assume that that's probably in line with what Panda's customer demographic is as well.
Could be. Yeah, we're a barbershop. Yeah. We don't do color. Most of our customers are men. They want to, have a good quality experience, but they don't want to be there all day. So they want to get their haircut and go do something else.
Yeah, like I said, it is a way to solve the pro forma still. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens over the next few years. One of the things I found that's probably, and it's been at least my experience, I don't feel like I have a lot of competitors in the retail development world.
I find that hard to believe, though.
Do you?
Yeah. I look at your posts on LinkedIn and just meteoric rise of your company in this thing. I'm thinking, this isn't, the tenants are pretty well known. They need people to build these buildings. So I'm just very impressed by the run up that you've had.
I just think there's a lot of people that have retired or left the business, and there's not a whole lot of new retail developers coming in. I think, it's, to me, if you want to be a developer and you want to own a jet, you should go be an apartment developer. Right. You should build industrial or buy industrial properties. Yeah. If you want to live on Delta, Southwest, American Airlines, United, and make the top tier, SkyMiles program for all of them, be a retail developer.
Also, I think, too, and you can correct me, but I view you, and I don't know anything about your business, I don't know anything about the economics, but you look like you're hitting singles and doubles.
All day.
And no home run. I'm like, don't invest everything in the home run. No, single, double, move on.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you get to scale. I think it's also, and I just love it when you post that you take care of your brokers, you make sure everybody that's involved in producing that deal is recognized, and you and I know, we've been around a long time, there are not a lot of people that think that through enough to recognize that there's a lot of things that come out to make this happen. So if you can make your fee on the developer side. You're hitting singles and doubles. You're spreading the accomplishment and the wealth with the entire team. You're just going to keep rolling.
Well, as you well know, the entire process doesn't even start until the broker finds the deal. Right. And 99 times out of 100, it's a broker that finds the deal and calls me or you or anybody else, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, to me, the credit's always due, right? They initiated the whole process, and then there's an entire team that it takes to get it done.
Exactly. I know when I started and built a big shopping center out here in Mukilteo with as the head leasing guy, and I'd go to this meeting with the developer, and there's two land use attorneys, and there's architects and this and that, and they're all of this is going on, and there's a banker, and I'm like, guys, it starts and ends at leasing. You should be asking me, what can we get in rent? What are the quality of tenants we can get? Let's start from there. And I can't tell you how many times in that developing that shopping center, I had to tell them or say, hey guys, nobody's going to lease that space. It's in the shadow. The setback is too far from the front of the grocery store. They've got that fascia that goes in and out like that. That looks great on an architect rendering, but you can't split up the space then. Yeah. You have no flexibility to move, expand this tenant. Anyway, so you're right. Brokers are the key. Everything starts and ends at leasing. If nobody pays the rent, the rest of it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. It's also just amazing, still owning and running a brokerage. It's so amazing to me when they catch that little sparkle in their eye because they found something, right? Because they can see it instantly.
Yes. And it certainly is a business where you cannot be instant gratification oriented. So you have to take people that are used to, their whole life is do this, see the result. You gotta look out a ways, and then have it be fulfilling for you to find that nugget, and then you see the end result down the road.
If you could jump in the time machine, in the DeLorean, right, Back to the Future time machine, what would you tell your 25-year-old or 30-year-old self, right? That's just getting into commercial real estate, just as a rookie, trying to figure out what to do.
Yep.
What would you tell yourself to do different?
I would understand the power of networking much earlier. That'd be the first thing I do. I would get to know who's the players, develop relationship with them, not just transactional relationships with them. Find out really who's around and who's going to be around. I think at the end of the day, when I look back on it, I thought it was all about dollars and cents and size and rent and things like that, and I missed that for the first several years. Now, granted, my first job I was in-house leasing guy. All the infrastructure was there. I really didn't have to go out and network a lot. We weren't just taking orders. We had to go out and cold call and all that fun thing. But I would think because you're that base of people that and they're impactful, they're going to be around for a long time. And at some point, they're going to need you. You're going to need them. You and I are both mentors at ICSC, which is a great thing. And I just tell people, just do what you say you're going to do. And also make sure that at the end of the day, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And my first boss, he was the guy that goes, Jim, when I was starting this development company, I was begging the bankers, and they would never return my call. Now they're calling me. And obviously they don't want me to go broke. They've lent me too much money. I got to keep going. But it really was one of those things where you get to that level and more business comes to you because of your reputation, how others have talked about you over time and things like that.
What a great piece of advice. And, it's kind of interesting. There's a couple people I've met through social media that are putting together informal cocktail parties and get-togethers. Mm-hmm. Ashley Casey with the shopping center group down in the Southeast.
I know Ashley.
Like her little lunch and learn program. I can't remember the name of it. I probably butchered it, but something like that. But it's wild. She'll get a couple of retailers to do like a little panel, and she'll have 100 to 200 people show up to these. Sure. And she's doing one in New York for ICSC next week. And then the other one is Daniel Harold, who's a sales broker at Northmark, and he keeps putting together informal cocktail parties. And so, like, for example, I see Red River, in DFW in January, and he just throws a cocktail party together, and there'll be like 300 or 400 people that show up to these things.
Sure.
I think our world is starved for more networking. Anytime there's any of these networking events, it kind of blows my mind. Another friend of mine is Linda Day Harrison, and her event is called Let's Get Social, and she throws it on Sunday night before ICSC Vegas show. And same thing, it's grown from this like tiny little thing to like this last year. I think she had 300 or 400 people there. Right. It's just wild.
Well, I started my year at the Whistler ICSC conference in
that's a good way to start.
BC for Canada. Yeah, it's big. It's a big show. Secret's out. It's the best ICSC meeting there is. But the action happens in the village and at the dinners and at the cocktail parties, and it's important to have the meetings and all those fun things, but that's not where the action happens. It really is the networking and finding out really, because you get the backstory. When you get people off to the side and not in the normal talk track of the business, you find out really what's going on.
I always like to ask, each guest I've talked with so far, tell me about a big mistake you've made in business. And then more importantly, what did you do to fix it? And I find most people tend to learn more from people's mistakes than anything else.
I think the biggest mistake, and I look at it as a mistake from a career standpoint, but from a quality of life standpoint, I don't. So back when I was a broker, I was, again, through Neil Frumpkin, Ted Frumpkin, I ended up going to Bentonville and was one of Walmart's first brokers when they came to Washington. And had a mandate. I thought there was going to be a couple of us doing this. I put together the whole expansion thing and got the first couple deals teed up, and then the relationship wasn't working out. So I backed out of it. I look back on that now, and it probably wasn't the wisest business move for me. But at the time in my life, it was they wanted 100% of my time and this and that, and things weren't working out too well. I just backed out of that probably a little too soon. So when I look back and I turned the account over to a fabulous guy, Rick Barr, made a ton of deals in Washington, but I look back and probably jumped out of that one a little too quickly.
What was this, 90s?
Yeah, it was mid 90s. Whenever they first opened in Washington.
So I guess the lesson there is even, because it is common, right, in our world that you have personnel change, right, for the companies that you're working with. Yeah. Sometimes it's just worth sticking around, giving it a better go.
Though I think too, I was a small town guy. Seattle's a small town, and Walmart's the big dog, and I just didn't realize what a machine it was. And the first store that opened in Omak is a deal that I started working on. And Rob Walton flies out, and Tom C. and the whole thing, and they're landing at a little dirt strip in Omak, and there's a little Jim going, okay, so where are we going to lunch? We got Burger King or Arby's. Which one do you want? So I look back on it now, and I was a little naive. If I would have been a broker in one of the bigger cities and realized what was ahead of me, I probably would have stuck with it longer.
What did they choose, Burger King or Arby's?
We went to Burger King.
Did they really?
Yeah.
And what does Rob Walton order at Burger King?
I don't know. That's like
a Whopper.
30 years ago.
A Whopper, I assume.
Yeah,
right.
But they're all very great, nice people. Yeah. Everything was fine, but I didn't realize what a machine it was, and I probably should have stuck with that a little longer.
How entertaining. That is a great share. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Like I said, it's interesting. I think, especially on the social media side, everybody constantly wants to talk about all their wins and their victories. Yeah. But it's interesting, the few times where somebody opens up and is vulnerable and shares something that they did wrong, those are usually the lessons that stick with you forever.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about Great Clips. We've talked about your franchisees. The company culture is awesome.
Yep.
The sabbatical is amazing. Why choose Great Clips? If you're a landlord that's listening here, why should you choose Great Clips? What's the benefit? Why are you the best? Why is this an easy decision for them?
I think Great Clips has stayed true to the basic tenets of the business. Where is the most value in the haircutting category? And it's in the haircuts. So when I started Great Clips, all the other brands and Supercuts and Cost Cutter and those guys, Fantastic Sam's, they were just haircut places. Then they all morphed into color and other things. And Great Clips stayed in this thanks to the owners of our company. Really, the business is in being good at this one thing. So we're the largest hair salon brand in North America, and we've recently surpassed Regis, which used to be the biggest thing. We now have more stores than they do, and as a collective, I just think that we stayed focused on one thing. Ultimately, it is making sure the franchisees have everything they need to do a great business because they're running the stores. And I've seen franchises that miss that a little bit. They get too big, too full of themselves. Great Clips has stayed true to what we're good at. We innovate around our core, which is haircuts. So I think the consistency, we have everybody at Great Clips Corporate pulling on one oar, which is one brand, one methodology, a very tight brand measure evaluation strategy to understand what's happening in the salons. So we're just consistent. you get a Great Clips in your shopping center, it's probably not going anywhere. We're not the sexy new kid on the block, but what we do really good. And we try to maintain that focus on taking care of the customer, being in the place where they want to be, make it easy. Our business is about being convenient to the customer. So that's 115 salons in Phoenix, and we're adding 5 more next year, okay? I mean, if the customers didn't dial into us, we wouldn't be able to be that successful. So I think when you look at Great Clips overall, it's just that consistency factor. It is something that's not an elective. You are not going to, you got to pay somebody for your haircut. Yes, there are people that do their own and whatever, but generally speaking, it's a category that's not going to be .com out of business. We're not going to have to go to an online model or whatever. So it's, and our franchisees really, if they didn't pay the rent, this would all be BS. So they're consistent, they're reliable. We have a lot that are transitioning legacy-wise to the second generation. Nick's a second generation, okay? That's a classic example of how Great Clips works, is you have the people that started it, and they're obviously getting older, and then they transfer it to the next generation. So Great Clips is all about family and legacy and staying true to our core values. We have a lot of things that come at us. Should we do this? Should we change that? And we innovate around what we do, but we're still doing the same thing I signed up for 25 years ago.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for coming on the pod, Jim. Thanks for telling us the story
Sure.
about Great Clips.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful.